we had a brand new NBC News Wall Street Journal poll about Trump, about the state of politics. We wanted to take you through some surprising findings. Here's the bottom line for Donald Trump, what jumped out at me looking at this poll, and I want to take you through it. Couple ways to interpret it. So start with this, the bottom line number. What's Donald Trump's approval rating right now? Well, 40%. Now, historically, you'd say, my God, a president, June, his first year in office, all the way down to 40%. That is a disaster. That's historically how we would look at this. The question, though, maybe a little more complicated with Trump. Here's what I mean. Take this in mind here. 40% approval rating right now. Take a look back during the campaign. This was Election Day last year. This was Gallup. Favorable, unfavorable view of Donald Trump. Do you remember this? His favorable number was 35% on Election Day. Just 35% of voters had a favorable view of him. We were looking at that number, and we were saying disaster, toxic, landslide material, cannot win the White House with that number. With a 35% favorable number, I don't need to tell you, Donald Trump won the White House, just barely, but he did win the White House. So, is there maybe more support beneath the numbers than it appears at 40%? That's one thing to keep in mind. There's also this. During the campaign, remember Donald Trump's support. At its worst, he hit 36% in the summer of 2016. At his best in the polls, he hit 43%. That was the range, 36% to 43%. Of course, he got 46 on Election Day. Well, look at the range so far of his approval rating as president. Does this look familiar? This is basically the same graph. His low point is 35. His high point is 45. His approval rating as president is operating in the exact same range that Donald Trump was as a candidate last year, as his support as a candidate was. It's like we never took a break from the election. So we look at these numbers with Trump as president, and you got to think this is something the president himself might be thinking about when people tell him, wow, your approval rating is so low, you've got to make changes. He might be thinking back to the campaign, and frankly, some Republicans who doubted him during the campaign might be thinking back to the campaign and saying, we were seeing the same numbers then and we thought it was a disaster, but he ended up winning. It complicates how to think about these Trump poll numbers. A couple other things we can quickly show you. This question of, is he competent? Is he incompetent? Well, 45% say competent, 55% incompetent. Obviously, you don't want that number if you're president, but it is worth noting Barack Obama, the number actually wasn't that much different, speaking to a really deep division in this country. It was 50% competent, 50% incompetent when NBC News surveyed this question a few years ago. And then you ask people this question. All of these problems, all this noise you're hearing about Trump, chaos, crisis, what does it reflect? 42% say it reflects the establishment fighting him. And 50% say it reflects that lack of experience and competence. And you ask people, what is the establishment? Who is the establishment? There's two things they tell you. Traditional politicians and the news media. So you can see there are a lot of people. There's certainly a lot of people who have a very negative view of Trump. There's a lot of people, though, who take all of this noise you're hearing about crisis and chaos and say, hey, that is the sound of a guy trying to change the system. That's how 42%, at least, seem to be interpreting it. Anyway, some of the numbers we wanted to highlight for you.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.